Dr. Lena Caldwell stumbled through her penthouse door, exhaustion, a heavy cloak. Before she could even sigh, a hand clamped over her mouth, pulling her back into the terrifying unknown. The night had stretched on too long. Dr. Lena Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Dynamics, had been trapped at another one of those opulent charity galas her board insisted she attend. A grand ballroom filled with the hum of polished lies, champagne that tasted of obligation, and executives who measured influence in their philanthropic gestures. She had smiled, shaken hands, scrawled a substantial check for a children's hospital, and slipped away quietly before the final speeches. Her shoulders ached, her head throbbed. She longed for a stiff drink, maybe 10 minutes of absolute quiet before collapsing into the bed she hadn't truly rested in for days. By the time her chauffeur dropped her in front of her glass-walled penthouse, Lena craved nothing but silence. The city outside was still a vibrant beast. Neon lights pulsing across the skyscrapers, street vendors calling out the last of their late-night snacks, and the distant throb of a nightclub echoing faintly. Inside, though, her penthouse should have been a sanctuary of calm. It always was. The familiar hush, the cool air, the promise of solitude. It was all she wanted, all she needed. The moment Lena closed the heavy door behind her, the expected silence shattered. A presence, swift and unexpected, materialized from the shadows. Before she could react, a hand clamped across her mouth, firm and unyielding. Her body stiffened, every muscle coiling, ready to swing, ready to fight. A primal surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. She could feel her pulse hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, terrifying quiet. Who? What? The question screamed in her mind, unheard. "Don't make a sound," a voice whispered directly into her ear. It was a woman's voice, soft but trembling with an urgency that belied its quiet tone. Lena froze, the initial surge of panic momentarily replaced by a chilling sense of familiarity. She listened, straining to place it amidst the ringing in her ears. The scent of faint lavender, a subtle fabric softener. It was a scent she knew, but couldn't quite connect. Who was this, daring to accost her in her own home? She twisted slightly, and when the hand finally pulled away, Lena spun around, her eyes blazing. "Nia!" she hissed, the name a raw whisper of disbelief. It was Nia, the new household assistant, the one the agency had sent 2 weeks ago when the last one left abruptly. Lena barely noticed her most days, always quiet, always careful in her plain black uniform with the white apron tied neatly. But tonight, Nia's eyes were not quiet. They were red, glistening, filled with a desperate, palpable fear. "What are you doing in my house at this hour?" Lena whispered fiercely, her voice laced with barely suppressed rage. She ripped at the knot of her silk tie, the constriction suddenly unbearable. Her mind raced, grappling with this unprecedented breach of her personal space, this audacious act from an employee. Nia, trembling visibly, took a step back, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The fear in the assistant's eyes was profound, but Lena's own anger was a roaring fire, consuming all else. "And why in the world did you just grab me?" "Please," Nia said, her voice barely audible, yet imbued with a surprising quiet force. "Don't raise your voice." Lena stared at her, incredulous. "Why shouldn't I?" Her eyes narrowed, piercing through Nia's fragile composure. This woman, her employee, was not only trespassing on her personal space, but now dictating her volume? The audacity was staggering. Nia's chin trembled, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, but her gaze remained fixed, darting nervously down the long, silent hallway. The air thrummed with unspoken tension, a sense of an unseen, critical presence. Lena's patience frayed, demanding answers. "Give me one good reason, Nia." "Because your son is sleepwalking, and if you wake him the wrong way, you could lose him." For a moment, Dr. Lena Caldwell thought she hadn't heard correctly. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. "My son. Sleepwalking?" She stared at Nia, her mind scrambling to process a reality that felt utterly alien. Her son, Leo, 7 years old, quiet, shy, wandering the penthouse at night? The idea was absurd, terrifying. Nia looked down the hallway nervously, a tremor running through her. "It happens every night. About this time. I've been staying back to guide him. Tonight, he almost reached the stairs. Lena felt the weight of Nia's words sink in, a cold, hard lump in her stomach. The initial shock began to morph into something far more profound and devastating. A profound, sickening guilt. Lena's breath hitched. My son. And I didn't know. The thought was a physical blow. She, Dr. Lena Caldwell, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, a woman who commanded respect in every boardroom, was utterly blind to the silent crisis unfolding in her own home. Her boy, her gentle Leo, was wandering in the dark, and she, his mother, had been too busy, too absent, too consumed by the ceaseless demands of her career to notice. Not once. A stranger, this new household assistant, had known. This stranger had dared to cover her mouth to protect her child. Lena rubbed her forehead, a flicker of shame igniting in her eyes. Nia's voice, though still low, held a steady, unwavering resolve. It happens every night, about this time. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone who had witnessed this routine multiple times. I've been staying back after my shift. I couldn't leave him like that. Lena's gaze drifted down the long, silent hallway, imagining her small son, eyes wide open but seeing nothing, moving silently towards the edge of a precipice. Nia's next words solidified the nightmare. Tonight, he almost reached the stairs. I caught him just in time. The image made Lena's stomach churn. Lena's voice softened without her meaning it, laced now with a raw vulnerability she rarely allowed herself. I didn't know. The admission felt foreign on her tongue, a confession of a failure far greater than any business misstep. Nia simply nodded, her hands tightening together in front of her. No one else noticed. The quiet confirmation cut Lena deeper than any accusation could have. All the nannies, the house managers, the expensive security systems, none had registered this silent nightly plea from her son. Only Nia, the new assistant, had seen it, had stayed, had watched. A visible weight settled upon Lena's shoulders, pressing her down. You're not paid for that, Lena muttered, the words feeling hollow, inadequate. Nia's eyes, though still red-rimmed, met hers with a quiet dignity. I know, she replied simply. Her calmness, her lack of expectation, was more impactful than any outburst of anger or demand for recognition. It highlighted the vast chasm between Lena's transactional world and Nia's selfless compassion. Lena looked away, averted her gaze, unable to meet the quiet strength in Nia's face. The realization of Nia's unpaid dedication was a bitter pill to swallow. Nia's simple statement, devoid of any resentment or self-pity, cut Lena deeper than any boardroom insult. For the first time in years, Lena Caldwell realized her immense wealth hadn't bought her the one thing that truly mattered: presence in her son's life. And for the first time, she saw Nia not merely as the household assistant, dressed in her plain black uniform, but as a woman, a guardian. The quiet, observant woman who had been silently carrying a secret Lena, as a mother, should have known first. Nia's steady gaze seemed to penetrate Lena's carefully constructed world, exposing its hollowness. Lena sank onto the hallway bench, the stiff fabric of her designer suit, a stark contrast against the plush leather cushion. She rubbed her forehead, trying to make sense of the devastating truth Nia had just laid bare. Her mind, usually so sharp and analytical, felt muddled, overwhelmed. She had thought money solved everything. Nannies, private schools, drivers, a beautiful home. Yet here was a woman who earned less in a month than Lena spent on a single dinner. And she was the one watching Lena's son at midnight, protecting him from a danger Lena hadn't even perceived. The emptiness of her wealth echoed in the silent, opulent penthouse. Dr. Lena Caldwell, still processing the raw shock of Nia's revelation, sank onto the hallway bench. Her designer suit, usually a symbol of her power, now felt stiff, almost suffocating against the supple leather cushion. She rubbed her forehead, trying to smooth away the throbbing ache that had nothing to do with the charity dinner and everything to do with the chasm in her own life. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, was now barely a whisper, tinged with a vulnerability she rarely allowed. "Why didn't you come to me?" Lena asked, her tone lower now, almost pleading, the question escaping her lips before she could fully consider its implication. It was an involuntary plea, born not of anger, but of a dawning terrible confusion. Naya stood quietly, her gaze fixed on the polished marble floor, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She seemed to hesitate, gathering her thoughts, preparing to deliver another truth Lena wasn't ready to hear. Naya finally shook her head, a slow, deliberate movement. Her voice, though still soft, carried an unwavering firmness that cut through Lena's lingering defenses. "I didn't think it mattered to you, ma'am." The words struck Lena like a physical blow, a harsh, unvarnished truth that vibrated through her. Her chest tightened, a familiar constriction she usually associated with a losing business deal. But this was far more profound. This was personal. The sting wasn't just in the accusation, but in the terrifying possibility that Nia might be right. Had she truly projected such an image of indifference? She recoiled slightly, not physically, but deep within herself, a silent acknowledgement of the pain Nia's simple honesty inflicted. Naya's expression remained gentle, yet resolute, a mirror reflecting Lena's own perceived failures back at her. "I care about my son," Lena asserted, the words rushing out, a desperate defense against the stinging accusation. It was a statement of belief, a conviction she had always held, even as her actions proved otherwise. Naya looked up then, her eyes meeting Lena's, filled not with judgment, but with a profound, almost ancient wisdom. "I believe that," Nia said, her voice gentle, yet it carried the weight of an immutable law. "But children don't feel belief, ma'am. They feel your presence." The words pierced Lena deeper than any boardroom insult, deeper than any market crash. They laid bare the core of her failing, the fundamental truth she had overlooked in her relentless pursuit of success. She stared at Nia, absorbing the quiet power of her statement, realizing that all her wealth, all her provisions, meant nothing without the warmth of her own being. "Tonight," Nia continued, her gaze drifting down the long, silent hallway, her voice dropping to a somber tone. He walked past the stairwell, eyes wide open, but still asleep. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The image materialized vividly in her mind. Leo, her small, quiet boy, wandering blindly towards the precipice, utterly vulnerable. Her stomach churned, a cold dread washing over her. "I stopped him," Nia said, her voice thick, as if reliving the moment. She broke off, swallowing hard, her eyes glistening. "If I hadn't, I caught him just in time." Lena leaned back against the bench, pressing her head against the cool wall, her eyes shut tightly. She could almost feel the phantom weight of her son's small body, teetering on the edge, and the immense, crushing wave of what might have been had Nia not been there. Naya stepped closer, her voice softer now, almost apologetic. "I know I shouldn't have touched you the way I did, covering your mouth like that." Lena opened her eyes, meeting Nia's gaze, a profound gratitude mixing with the shame swirling within her. "You were protecting my boy," she cut in, her voice rough with emotion. "I should thank you." Nia lowered her gaze again, her hands returning to their clasped position in front of her apron. Her response was simple, unadorned by expectation. "I didn't do it for thanks, ma'am." It was a statement that further highlighted the selfless nature of her actions, making Lena's own past neglect feel even more stark. Lena looked at Nia properly now, truly seeing her for the first time beyond the uniform and the job title. She was young, mid-20s at most, but her eyes, though weary, held a depth that spoke of responsibilities carried long before she entered this opulent house. A quiet strength resided in her, a resilience Lena recognized, though it manifested differently than her own. "You said something earlier," Lena began slowly, recalling Nia's earlier words from their jarring confrontation, "about carrying this alone." It was a question, an invitation for Nia to reveal more of herself, a crack in Lena's carefully constructed shell of professional distance. Nia offered no elaborate explanation, no dramatic backstory. She simply replied, her voice flat, "I'm used to it." The 4 words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Lena felt a fresh wave of shame wash over her. She, who believed money solved everything, who bought nannies, private schools, and drivers, was confronted by a woman who earned less in a month than Lena spent on a single dinner, and who was the one quietly watching over her son at midnight. The opulent surroundings of her penthouse suddenly felt hollow, a gilded cage built with the wrong currency. She opened her mouth to ask more, but soft footsteps cut through the silence. Kingsley Adebanjo had thought his penthouse was silent, but a new sound sliced through the stillness. Soft footsteps. A shuffling, barely audible against the plush carpet of the corridor. Both Dr. Lena Caldwell and Nia, who had just delivered a truth that stung, turned in unison towards the sound. Lena's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the sound of an intruder, but something far more fragile. A small figure was emerging from the shadows at the end of the long hallway, a phantom in the dim night. A small figure appeared at the end of the corridor, barefoot, eyes half closed. It was Leo, her 7-year-old son, his small frame a beacon of vulnerability in the vast, silent house. He moved with the slow, unsteady gait of someone caught between two worlds, his consciousness somewhere far away. A soft, barely perceptible murmur escaped his lips, a whisper that tore through Lena's chest. "Mama," the boy breathed, his voice a fragile thread of longing woven into the quiet. Lena shot to her feet, her body moving before her mind could fully process. An instinct, primal and fierce, pulled her towards her son, but Nia, ever vigilant, ever calm, was quicker. "Walk slowly," she whispered quickly, her voice a low, urgent murmur that cut through Lena's rising panic. "Don't startle him." Lena froze, the wisdom in Nia's words piercing through her haze of emotion. She nodded, her movements becoming deliberate, cautious. She bent, slowly opening her arms, a silent invitation to the small, wandering boy. "Leo," Lena called softly, her voice thick with a tenderness she hadn't felt in years. The sound seemed to draw him, a familiar anchor in his somnolent wanderings. The boy stumbled forward, his small, sleep-addled body moving straight into her embrace. Lena wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close, feeling the fragile weight of him against her chest. It was a reunion of souls, a moment of profound personal significance for Lena, a physical manifestation of the emotional chasm she was only now beginning to bridge. Leo clung to her, his tiny hands fisting in her expensive blouse. "I was looking for you," he whispered, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Lena's throat tightened, a sudden, aching constriction that made it difficult to breathe. Those 5 simple words, uttered by her innocent son, spoke volumes of his unspoken loneliness, his nightly quest for a presence that had been absent for too long. "I'm here now, son," Lena murmured, burying her face in his soft hair. And for the first time in a very long time, she meant it with every fiber of her being. Lena held her son close, rocking him gently. She hadn't realized how small Leo still was, how easily his tiny frame fit into her arms. Too many late flights, too many demanding meetings, too many nights leaving him in the care of strangers, of nannies, of household assistants. The thought was a fresh stab of regret. She had built an empire, but at what cost? She had been so consumed by the pursuit of success, she'd forgotten the most precious success of all, being a mother. Nia stood a few steps back, her hands folded, observing silently, her expression soft yet guarded. Lena rubbed Leo's back gently, the scent of cocoa butter and soap a poignant reminder of his innocence. "How long has this been happening?" she asked, her voice hushed, not looking up. Nia's reply was quiet, matter-of-fact, yet it carried the weight of sustained vigilance. "Since I started here," Nia answered. 7 times. Always after midnight, always pacing like he's looking for someone. Lena shut her eyes, pressing her cheek against Leo's head. 7 times, and she had known none of them. "He thinks I left him," Lena murmured, the words a painful confession of her deepest fear. Nia hesitated, then spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "I think he just misses you," she corrected. Lena looked up at her, the distinction subtle but significant. Left implied abandonment, misses implied a longing for what should be there. Lena realized the truth in Nia's words. "That's not the same," she acknowledged, a dawning understanding in her eyes. Nia didn't argue. She simply reached out to adjust a picture frame on the wall, a photo of Lena and Leo at the beach years ago. The glass reflected the boy's tiny, carefree smile. "You know," Nia said, her voice low, drawing Lena's attention back from the distant beach photo on the wall, the one reflecting a tiny, fleeting smile. "When I was a child, my mother worked nights, long hours, sometimes 2 jobs. I would wait by the door just to hear her voice when she came back. I didn't need gifts. I just needed to know she was there." Lena listened, her arms tightening around Leo, feeling the fragile weight of his small body. Naya didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Her words were a quiet, poignant echo of Leo's own silent longing, a universal truth laid bare in the luxurious, yet often empty, confines of Lena's penthouse. Leo, still nestled against her, represented that child waiting at the door, even if Lena hadn't seen it until now. The weight of Nia's words sank into Lena, a heavy truth carved into the stone of her conscience. She had been building wealth, chasing contracts, investing in tomorrow, while her son longed for something as simple as today. Leo stirred in her arms, a soft sigh escaping him, his tiny fingers curling almost instinctively into Lena's silk shirt. "Is it morning?" he whispered faintly, his voice a soft, sleepy murmur against her. Lena kissed his forehead, a gentle, reassuring touch. "Not yet, son. Still night. You're safe." The boy sighed again, a deeper, more contented sound, his body relaxing against hers. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, but Lena felt it, a tangible sign of a fragile peace returning. Nia finally moved closer, her presence a quiet comfort in the dim hallway. "He was holding my hand before you came in," she said softly, her gaze resting on Leo's peaceful face. "Sometimes that's the only thing that calms him." Lena looked at Nia, a complex mix of gratitude and guilt churning within her. Naya had offered the simple, profound comfort Lena herself had been too busy to provide. A stranger had been the anchor for her son's restless nights, a silent guardian in her absence. The realization stung, a fresh wound on her awakening conscience. "You've done more for him in 2 weeks than I have in months," Lena admitted, the words escaping her in a raw whisper. Her gaze, earnest and filled with a newfound humility, met Nia's. Nia shook her head gently, a soft smile touching her lips, almost imperceptible. "You don't need to say that, ma'am." "I do," Lena insisted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart, "because it's true." For a moment, the penthouse felt different. Not just like a house filled with silence and expensive furniture, but like a home. Fragile, imperfect, alive. A spark had been lit, a warmth kindling in the vast, cold space. The air in the penthouse, usually sterile and hushed, now hummed with a different energy. It felt softer. The cold, polished surfaces seemed to absorb a newfound warmth, reflecting not just the city lights, but a nascent glow from within. It was no longer merely a glass-walled testament to Lena's ambition, but a space holding fragile, imperfect, yet undeniably alive emotions. A house was beginning its slow, tender transformation into a home, and Lena felt the shift deep within her own soul. This was the true luxury, one her wealth could never have purchased alone. Lena carefully carried Leo back to his room, the familiar weight in her arms now feeling precious, not burdensome. She tucked him under the blue covers, the dinosaur patterns a forgotten detail she now noticed. Brushing her fingers through his soft, curly hair, she watched until his breathing evened, a quiet, rhythmic lullaby. The simple act felt profound, a rediscovered ritual. The silence of his room, usually a stark reminder of her absence, was now filled with the gentle hum of her presence. She lingered, just watching him, a mother finally seeing her son. When Lena returned to the living area, Nia was in the kitchen, moving with quiet efficiency. 2 mugs sat on the counter, steam rising from one, the faint, comforting smell of ginger drifting into the air. Without a word, Nia poured hot water into the second mug, sensing Lena's exhaustion, her need for something warm. Lena leaned against the counter, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day, yet strangely awake, her mind clear. The quiet companionship was unexpected, a balm to her frayed nerves, a prelude to a conversation she knew she needed to have. "I'd like to keep you here," Lena said, her voice low, almost hesitant. Naya didn't look up, continuing to wipe the counter. "That's your choice, ma'am." "Not just as a household assistant," Lena clarified, the words making Nia pause, her movements stilling. Naya finally turned, her eyes, usually guarded, now held a flicker of surprise. "I need someone in this house who sees him the way you do, who actually cares about him. Lena's gaze was earnest, vulnerable. She wasn't making a business offer. She was making an admission of profound need, a plea for guidance she couldn't articulate any other way. Naya finally turned, her gaze steady, unwavering. "You don't need to hire love, ma'am. You just need to be present." Her voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of an undeniable truth that resonated deep within Lena. Lena didn't argue. There was nothing to debate, no negotiation to be made. The words settled in her heart, like truth carved in stone. All her life she had sought to acquire, to build, to climb. She had believed that, with enough resources, any problem could be outsourced, any need met. But Nia's simple statement shattered that illusion, revealing the profound emptiness of her approach to motherhood. She could only nod, a silent acknowledgement of Nia's profound, unvarnished wisdom. Lena felt a humbling surrender wash over her. It wasn't about wealth or status anymore. It was about learning a new language, a new way of being. She looked at Naya, her eyes pleading, earnest. "Then teach me, I want to learn." Her voice was barely a whisper, stripped of its usual authority. For the first time in years, Dr. Lena Caldwell wasn't making a business deal, wasn't dictating terms or signing a contract. She was making a promise, not to a client or a board, but to herself, to Nia, and most importantly, to her son. It was a promise born of vulnerability, a commitment to grow beyond the CEO, to become a mother. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows. The city outside had already come alive, horns blaring, vendors shouting, the morning rush beating its familiar rhythm. But inside, the house felt different. A quiet hum of anticipation, a gentle warmth, had replaced the sterile silence. Dr. Lena Caldwell sat at the sleek dining table, still in her house clothes, watching Leo eat pancakes. She hadn't sat with him for breakfast in months, perhaps even years. The simple act felt revolutionary, a small, tangible step into this new, unfamiliar world of presence. Nia glanced back briefly from the kitchen, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips before she returned to wiping the counter. "Do you like them?" Lena asked, her voice softer than usual. Leo's mouth was full, a smear of syrup on his cheek, but he nodded enthusiastically. "Banana with cinnamon?" he mumbled, his eyes wide with a mixture of delight and disbelief. Lena looked toward the kitchen again, catching Nia's eye. She leaned closer to her son, her heart swelling. "From now on," Lena said firmly, making eye contact, "I'll eat breakfast with you every morning." Leo looked up, his eyes widening further, disbelieving. "Even when you have work?" he asked, his voice small. "Even then," Lena affirmed, her gaze unwavering. The boy grinned, a pure, unadulterated joy that spread through Lena's chest, warming her in a way no business victory ever had. After breakfast, Nia cleared the table with her usual quiet efficiency, while Lena helped Leo get ready for school. It was awkward at first. Lena fumbled with the tiny buttons of his shirt, her long, elegant fingers accustomed to power dressing, not toddler dressing. She tied his shoelaces too slowly, her movements clumsy and hesitant. Leo, usually so quiet and reserved, laughed. A bright, uninhibited sound that echoed through the penthouse, filling it with a joyous melody Lena hadn't realized was missing. That laugh, that simple, genuine sound of her son's happiness, was worth everything. It was a clumsiness she would gladly embrace 1,000 times over. When the driver arrived, Lena walked her son downstairs herself. She held his small hand all the way to the waiting car, her grip firm and reassuring. Neighbors in the opulent building lobby glanced curiously, their eyes lingering on the powerful CEO. They were unused to seeing Dr. Caldwell, the formidable tech mogul, performing such simple fatherly duties. But Lena didn't care. The curious glances, the hushed whispers, they were inconsequential. Her focus was entirely on the small hand nestled in hers, the warmth of Leo's presence beside her. She kissed his forehead as he climbed into the car, a silent promise hanging in the air. Back upstairs, Lena found Nia folding laundry in the master bedroom, moving with that same quiet efficiency, as if she had learned to live unnoticed. Lena hesitated at the doorway, then spoke, her voice resolute. "I want to change things." Nia looked up. surprised, her hands pausing over a neatly folded shirt. Change? I thought providing money was enough. Lena continued, her gaze fixed on Nia, that if I gave him everything, he wouldn't lack anything. But I was wrong. I want to be here. Not just for show, for real. Nia studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable, then nodded slowly. Then, start small, Nia advised, her voice gentle but firm. Children, remember patterns, not promises. Sit with him, listen to him, let him see your face when he wakes and when he sleeps. Lena exhaled deeply. You speak like someone who's lived this. Nia hesitated, a flicker of a distant pain in her eyes. I have. Lena didn't press further, but the look in Nia's eyes told her she carried scars Lena couldn't see. The penthouse felt different now, no longer a monument to Lena's ambition, but a canvas awaiting the vibrant strokes of a true home.